Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines. Why did I get that message 3 times? Interesting. Good morning, beautiful people. It is a beautiful day. This is what it looks like if I have the retouch on versus retouch off. Doesn't really change much, actually. It's kind of flattering. Anyway, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing this morning? Today's live is going to be a big one. Today's live is going to be a big one. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, and we're going to dive into the details and into the legislation. And I don't know if you're really going to get this kind of like deep dive anywhere else. So with everything being said, I always try to report information and put it in context, and also like really just bring in the awareness here. So I'm looking at all this happening, and there's an element to politics where it's like, well, what does something appear to be versus what is actually the truth? Look, you don't have to come to the same conclusions as me, but I'm going to be giving you some information that you might not have heard yet, and this will become a bigger thing come this, the next few days. So, credit where credit is due. Donald Trump did sign to release the Epstein files. Great. I will be talking all about that. Though there have been some past actions within the last week that has kind of made me think, is this going to be a bait and switch? Is this going to be like a kill switch even? And let me explain. Like, you know me, I will give credit where it's due. That's great. Sign, release the Epstein files. Though I also wonder how much is going to be redacted, what kind of stuff is going to be redacted. And we're going to look into the specifics regarding why the Biden administration actually didn't release the Epstein files. I'm going to be giving you a lot of jurisprudence for those people who are like, what does that even mean? It just means I'm going to be informing and educating people a little bit more about the executive branch and the judicial branch when it comes to handling situations like this. So we're going to be talking all about that kind of stuff. It's all redacted, LMAO. Yeah. We're going to be talking about that. They have something cooked up. Bonnie will not release the files because of an ongoing investigation. We are going to be talking all about that. Jedi Senhai 5510. Yeah. We're going to be talking all about that. We're going to be breaking in and diving into the details here. And I might hide away the chat here in just a second. If Jenny happens to pop in here, please, Jenny, leave a comment. I'll make sure to put you as a moderator in here. And then also, if I hide away the chats here, just Jenny texts me saying that you're in here and I'll make sure to add you. Anyway, so let's break everything down. Please make sure to like the stream, share the live. I love all of you. It's been about 4 minutes. So let's break everything down here. If you make me a mod, I promise to delete all positive comments. My God, why would I do that? Why would I do that? We want positivity in here. Anyway, so let's break everything down here. So the House of Representatives passed the bill to release the Epstein files. They did that on Tuesday? Yes, Tuesday. The Senate shortly after voted via voice vote to actually release the Epstein files. Then it goes to Trump's desk. Well, Trump yesterday signed the bill to release the Epstein files. Everything's good dandy, right? In theory. In practice, what does it look like? Might be a little bit different. So let me get to explaining everything. What are some of the caveats? What are some of the limitations? What might actually happen? We shall see. Look, if you and I come to the same set of a same conclusion based on the same set of facts, then great. If not, no worries. But let me dive into a little bit more executive and judicial, like, education here. So in a lengthy post, Donald Trump basically went on and said a whole bunch of stuff, being like, I just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. Then goes on to say a whole bunch of other things. He still calls it a Democrat witch hunt and scam that has been divisive, and still calling it a hoax. So that just, how are you you're like, fine, take a look at it. It's a hoax anyway. I don't know where all of that lands. Though, I will say, one part of his statement I wanted to directly address, since it's been a question that many people have asked. So, of course, let's see. Jeffrey Epstein was charged by the Trump Justice Department. Blah, 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 blah. He basically asks and says, well, why didn't the Biden administration, where is it that says in here? Let's see, all this stuff. Hold on just a second. Let me get to the section where he asked about that. As everyone knows, blah, 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 my direction, great. The Biden administration did not turn over a single file or page related to Democrat Epstein, nor did they even speak about him. So there have been a lot of people asked, well, why weren't the Epstein files released during the Biden administration? That is a fair question. And I think a lot of these MAGA people have been asking that, attempting to use that as a dig. Well, let me explain actually why. And this is just going to be the reasoning. I'm not asking you to agree with the reasoning. I'm going to tell you what the reasoning was. So this is a piece from News Nation, which I'm not even a big fan of News Nation. But because I can't stand Chris Cuomo. I think he's awful. But they did a piece kind of talking about it, and then I went through and verified information and got a little bit more. So why weren't the Epstein files released during the Biden administration? Good question. Let's dive into it here. Make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. So the Epstein case was actually an open investigation during the Biden administration. So the Epstein case was an open criminal investigation during the Biden administration. Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown explained on X. Brown's extensive reporting since 2017 has shone a light on Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes, and her book about him, Perversions of Justice, is a New York Times bestseller. Okay, cool. They had an open grand jury, and even after Maxwell's conviction, the case was on appeal. Anyone in law enforcement knows you don't open your case when it's still under appeal. Victims were still going to the FBI with information during Biden's term, but that changed when President Donald Trump's Department of Justice reviewed the files and closed the case in July of 2025, Brown said. Now pause. If you all remember, do you all remember back in July of 2025, earlier this year, the Trump administration came out with a document that basically said that there is no client list. Do you all remember this? This is what really renewed people's interest in Epstein. So, if you all remember, and I will read you the specific Department of Justice and FBI memo right here. This came out around in July. As a part of commitment to transparency, blah, 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 the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review and investigative holdings relating to Jeffrey Epstein. The files to Epstein included a large volume of images, yada, yada, yada. They said all of this stuff. Much of the material is subject to court-ordered sealing. Only a fraction of this material would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial. Anyway, through this review, we found no basis to revisit the disclosure of these materials and will not permit the release of any child stuff. So do you all remember that? The Trump Department of Justice and the Trump FBI, they basically put this memo out there saying, yeah, we're not really going to take this investigation any further. So this was the next part. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There's also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation into or against uncharged third parties. And then it said, to that end, we've labored to provide the public with maximum information, blah, 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 blah. So it's the determination of the Department of Justice and FBI that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Do you all remember that memo? It was, I think, July 12th. If I'm not mistaken, July 12th. And I know that this was dropped on a Sunday evening. So they were attempting to like kind of hide this away. Now, I actually did a Google search this morning. So it's 9:58 Eastern Standard Time here for me, at least, because I live in North Carolina. You can see up here, timestamped 9:01. I was asking FBI memo, no Epstein client list. I looked at it, and it's still there. Go and look at it yourself. This is the FBI Department of Justice memo that basically said there's no Epstein client list. There's no need to continue this investigation. I'm laying the groundwork here for the series of events that transpired. So all of this happened right at the same time that Elon Musk, who personally I cannot stand, lays the bombshell that says, hey, Trump is in the Epstein files. That's why they have not been made public. So the reason I'm queuing all of that up and asking, well, why wasn't this released during the Biden administration? That's a good question. Why wasn't it released during the Biden administration? Many things were under court-ordered seal. So if you all actually did a little bit of research, you would find why weren't the Epstein files released during the Biden administration? Due to a combination of ongoing legal proceedings, judicial seals, and prosecutorial priorities. Here is a breakdown. So, where is it here? So, with ongoing criminal investigations into Maxwell's trial and appeal, the Epstein case was reopened in 2019 under the Trump administration. Credit where credit is due, leading to Epstein's arrest and death in custody that year. This triggered a major federal investigation by the FBI's New York field office, which continued into the Biden era. Ghislaine Maxwell's Epstein's associate was arrested in 2020 and convicted in November of 2021. They convicted under the Biden administration, but it started under the Trump administration, this whole thing. And convicted in November of 2021 on charges including sex trafficking of minors. So, her conviction relied heavily on Epstein-related evidence, and releasing files prematurely could have compromised the case by revealing the investigative strategies, witness identities, or other sensitive details. Notice the use of the word could. Could doesn't mean would, though these were the specific judges were saying, we don't want to release this publicly because it could jeopardize the integrity of our prosecution, of the trial, all of that. Now, I'm not asking you to agree with what happened. That was just their reasoning. Maxwell's appeals process extended through Biden's term. She appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, upheld in 2023, then petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court, which was rejected, etc. Now, during this period, federal judges maintained seals on portions of the files to protect victims, many of whom were minors, ongoing probes, and trial integrity. Now you're like, okay, well, what does that even mean? What do you mean by under seal? What the hell is that? So when trial documents are under seal, they are kept confidential and not available to the public. So if you or I were to go and look for details on Jeffrey Epstein or some of those documents, they would not show up in a standard public search. That's simply what it means. Now, I'm not asking for you to agree or disagree with anything regarding whether it should or should not have been under seal. I'm not asking, but that is the reasoning they gave. And what's interesting is when something is under seal, there is separate storage for those documents, and the documents still exist but are hidden from public record. So they're not going to show up in your standard Google search. A judge has to actually approve it to be unsealed. This is one of those things where the judicial branch can check the executive branch and check the in the legislative branch. You know how you hear, oh, separation of powers and checks and balances when you're in your political science class? This is that at work. So different branches of government have different responsibilities. And those branches of government have different ways to check each other. You know, when you're in a friend group of 3 people and like you all kind of have a different role and you all have a way of like checking each other, that's the same way that it goes with our government. It's, in theory, you don't have one branch that's more powerful than the other, but each has a different role and they're all supposed to coordinate and check each other when they need a little bit of checking. That's how it works in theory. Now, the judicial branch can seal different records and unseal them as a way to protect trials' integrity and to check the legislative branch, the executive branch. You get me. So when someone asks, well, why wasn't it released during the Biden administration? It is simply because there were files that were under seal. Now, what's really interesting is that the Biden administration actually tried. They actually tried to get some of those files released. So even if the Biden administration had pushed through for the release, and courts could and did deny it. The same way that Trump has been facing some pushback with some of the courts regarding his actions, executive orders, etc. That happened during the Biden administration. It happens during all administrations. You'll have executive actions that end up being blocked by the judiciary. But that's also a way for the judicial branch to check the executive branch. That's part of the checks and balances that go along with it. You have the executive branch appointing different people, and those people can then block different actions. That's how our government works. I'm not asking you to agree with the blocking or with like certain things. I'm just saying that's how it works. So even if the Biden administration has pushed for the release, and it did, courts could deny it. Broader release required congressional action or judicial intervention, which Democrats attempted to do but faced roadblocks. Now, maybe they could have pushed harder. Sure. I'm not asking for you to agree or disagree or come. No, I'm just simply stating that the reason why they weren't released is because the conditions were different. And I've been saying this all along. The conditions for the Biden administration to release it was completely different versus now. And you're like, well, why now? Because the Epstein files spans multiple branches of government. I've said this from the beginning. You have the Department of Justice and FBI records, which are controlled by the executive branch, Donald Trump, etc. But then you also have the sealed court documents grand jury files, which were parts of ongoing investigations with Ghislaine Maxwell, everything, during the Biden administration. So why weren't they released? Well, because judges were saying we don't want it to be released until it's all kaput, because we don't want to jeopardize the trial or the integrity of the judicial process. Again, I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with that reasoning. That's simply the reason why. So, with all that being said, I just wanted to provide that context because it is a fair question for people to ask, why weren't they released during the Biden administration? And I just want to point out that, like, this investigation of, oh wait, no, hold on, that's the wrong thing. Hold on, just a second. Oh geez, I always have so many backgrounds and pictures to kind of do all of it. In short, the files weren't released because they were tied to an active federal case through mid-2025, with seals enforced by judges to prioritize justice for victims over public curiosity. Claims that Biden, quote, protected pedophiles or ignored the issue overlooked these legal realities. The administration advanced the Maxwell prosecution-related civil actions. So, all that being said, this is all kind of moot because guess what? The House of Representatives and the Senate, through lots of bipartisan compromise, passed the release of the Epstein files. The House, it was 427-1, with a couple people, 5 that were that didn't vote because of reasons they were out of town or etc. And that one person was Clay Higgins. Trust me, go and look into it. He's interesting. That all being said, that the whole thing with the Biden administration, whether they released it or not, became moot because guess what? It's been released now. Credit where credit is due, because Donald Trump ended up signing to release the Epstein files. Great. So my job as a journalist here is, okay, I'm seeing it pass the House, pass the Senate, be signed by the president. As someone who is looking at this whole thing, I'm like, why was there so much pushback from Trump and then an immediate stark reversal? I would hope they would ask that question regardless of your political affiliation. Because like here, if you see Donald Trump raging about something, calling it a hoax, calling it a Democrat hoax for the longest time, trying to say, why are you still talking about Epstein? And then immediately reversing course to then support its release, that's like your one friend being against something for the longest time and then all of a sudden one day just being super enthusiastically for it. You would be suspicious. And I would say that's very valid to be suspicious. So I am a little bit suspicious about what got Trump to change course so quickly. Now I'll give him credit because it seems like he did the right thing to sign the bill to release the Epstein files. Great. You're not going to see me criticizing him for that. I'm just simply asking, why were you so opposed to it? Then all of a sudden one day you are super supportive of it. I hope that regardless of who you are, you can look at that and say, yeah, that was kind of suspicious and weird. So with all that being said, let me get on to the next segment here because this might give a little bit of context into it. So if you all remember, the Department of Justice and the FBI released that memo back in early July that said that there is no client list. They literally said this, the systematic review revealed there is no incriminating client list. And so we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. The determination of the DOJ and FBI, no further disclosures would be appropriate or warranted. You go search for that memo that happened in July of 2025, it's still there today. It's still there today. Now, you'll say, well, okay, why did he reverse? Why did he reverse course? That's a good question. That, I hope, is the question that everyone is asking because it seemed kind of weird. Trump, his strategy is always double down, double down, double down, double down, double down. That's kind of who he is. Now, I wanted to ask about a certain thing that happened recently. So, where is it? Hold on. Where is it? Hold on, just a second. So, geez Louise. Here it is. So, if you all remember, back on November 14th, I believe that was Friday. I believe it was a Friday, November 14th. Trump actually, after now signing the bill to release the Epstein files, Trump actually kind of subtly declared an investigation into Democrats related to Epstein, which great. As a progressive Democrat, you want to investigate everyone relating to Jeffrey Epstein and corruption and awful child sex trafficking, go ahead. I'm not going to be opposed to that. Though I want to point out something. Has Trump launched a targeted investigation into Democrats' connections to Epstein? Yes. On November 14th of 2025, President Trump directed Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's ties to prominent Democrats, including former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, financial institutions, etc. This order came from via a Truth Social post. So I'm like, okay, let me go and actually find it. So Trump says, I will be asking Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice together with our great patriots at the FBI to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, and JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase is not a person. JP Morgan was a person, and that this is not a person that's alive today. Anyway, I guess in their coordination with the institution, JP Morgan and Chase, whatever. Trump's not always the most sharpest tool in the shed. Anyway, that all being said, let me also point out that this investigation reverses that memo in July of 2025. The Justice Department memo, which found no evidence in Epstein's files warranting probes into uncharged third parties. Again, remember the thing I just showed you? July of 2025, they released this saying, hey, there is no Epstein client list. There's no evidence that could predicate us or an investigation into uncharged third parties. It's the determination that no further disclosures be appropriate or warranted. And now that there was so much pushback that the House and the Senate said, no, we're going to pass a bill to release the Epstein files. And to Trump's credit, he signed the bill. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. Okay, you were so against it. Now you're for it. Why? Why? Is it because you were visited by like three Christmas spirits and you decided to then change course to be a good person? Or is there a bait and switch that's maybe about to happen? So that got me asking. Let me actually dive into this a little bit more. And if you're like, well, where are you going with this? Let me show you. So it's launched a investigation, a kind of small investigation into Democrats' connections to Epstein. I asked, well, will that investigation hinder, hamper, or like avoid, delay any sort of release of these files? And the answer might actually shock or surprise you. So I asked, well, will this delay any sort of, release of the files? So the bill includes exemptions. The bill that they passed includes exemptions allowing for withholding of materials that could jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, provided it's narrowly tailored and temporary. Well, Trump's new probe directly qualifies, potentially enabling the Department of Justice to redact or delay portions implicating people like Summers, Clinton, Hoffman, or related entities. Analysts and lawmakers, including Thomas Massey, warned this kill switch could shield key documents as the probe was launched just days before the bill's passage. You remember that Truth Social post he put out that said that he wanted to launch like a investigation specifically into Democrats that are involved in the Epstein files, which great, go ahead. But you do realize this is November 14th. This is a few days before the House even passed. Knowing that Trump was not going to be him to release the Epstein files, he reopens an investigation into the Epstein files, which, when there is precedent where open investigations can lead to massive redactions. So what kind of delay could we be possibly seeing? Well, will this delay release the Epstein files under the Freedom of Information Act? It could significantly delay the limit of release, though it's not indefinitely under FOIA specifically. So recent developments involve a congressional bill rather than FOIA requests. So I wanted to ask, okay, well, how would it create delay? What's the language in the bill? Is this going to tie up the Epstein files forever? With the bill, it overrides some FOIA hurdles by compelling release with any withheld sections that could trigger new FOIA lawsuits. In summary, the investigation, while fulfilling Trump's directive, risks turning promised transparency into selective disclosure, potentially delaying full access beyond the 30-day window through legal carve-outs. So they voted to release the Epstein files. Great. That's awesome. Though, are there specific caveats in here that because he reopened investigation into it, are they going to then pick and choose what they want released? This is what is going to be the discussion for the next month. Great. Credit where credit is due. He voted to release the Epstein files. Though, a couple days before he opens an investigation, knowing that if you open an investigation, that can tamper the release of the thing that you just signed to release. Meaning that you can control the rollout a little bit more, possibly. So let me get to the specific language that was in the bill. Thomas Massie, who is spearheading the passage of this bill, says, for anyone hoping to use ongoing investigations as a reason to withhold Epstein files, please read this language of the bill. Quote, narrowly tailored and temporary. Narrowly tailored and temporary. Subsection C of the permanent withholding says, would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. Now, I want to point out, narrowly tailored and temporary, well, those are very subjective terms. I can say that something is temporary, but mean that it's temporary for like 10 minutes, or maybe it's a day, or maybe it could be a couple days, or it could be a temporary pause on something. That could be, depending on what the subject is, it's very relative. Narrowly tailored. Okay, well, what is their definition of narrow? Does it confine to a certain subject, a specific line? What do they mean by narrowly tailored? This is the kind of stuff that when you get into legal jurisprudence, judicial decision-making, or even within the confines of the law, are so up to interpretation that it could go anywhere, even though it's meant to be a little bit more, for lack of a better word, tailored. So a DOJ lawyer could argue that the next 3 years is what they consider to be temporary. Now, the bill requires the Department of Justice under the Attorney General to publicly release all federal records, documents, flight logs, communications. Great. From Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Some people, including the replies to Thomas Massie's post, are worried that DOJ could drag its feet or withhold huge portions by claiming certain files are needed for ongoing and active investigations. Massie pointed out the exact wording in the bill that limits those excuses. Any withholdings or redaction for an active investigation must be narrowly tempered, tailored, and temporary. Well, narrowly tailored, it has to be extremely specific and limited. They can't just be blanket withholding everything by vaguely saying it's part of an investigation. Temporary, they can't sit on it forever. It has to be released as soon as that narrow reason no longer applies. But again, the definition for what narrow and temporary could be long years, and just like, you see how it's a relative term. That's the vague language like that is what makes legislation sometimes, it can be its downfall, or it could be the gold nugget it could be the key to its passage as well. So let me actually read some of what's in here. So this was the bill to release the Epstein files. There is a section in it that is subsection C, permanent withholdings. The Attorney General may withhold or redact the segregable portions of records that, and then it says, contain personally identifiable information, blah, 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 blah. Of course, that's the section that Clay Higgins is saying that I don't want to vote to release these files because it doesn't redact people's private information. It literally says in the bill, you idiot. Anyway. But this is the key part. If there's any moment in the live that's the most important, it's this right here. Under permitted withholdings, it says the Attorney General may withhold or redact segregable portions of records that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, provided that such withholding is narrowly tempered and temporary. But then it says, if it contains information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy, and are in fact properly classified pursuant to such executive order. You're like, okay, some of that went in one ear and out the other. What it's saying is that the Attorney General may withhold or redact, take out, segregable portions of the records if it jeopardizes national security and if it contains information specifically authorized via an executive order. So it is very possible that Trump puts out an executive order to shield certain information. That's my theory. But it's possible that he might do that. For the information he doesn't want released out there, he will declare it through an executive order to shield himself. It's a theory. It's not fact. It's just when it's specifically the language in the bill here. The Attorney General may shield or redact information if it contains information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense. Well, it's not above Trump for him to define anything that personally affects him to be an interest of national security. So I'm simply pointing that out there. Now, all redactions must be accompanied with a written justification published in the Federal Register and submitted to Congress. So even if there are parts that are redacted, they are going to be giving a summary of what is in that redaction. Now, what kind of accountability is there? I could redact a certain part of a page and just make up what's under that redaction. I could just say, like, I could redact certain parts of the Epstein files with people's names, and then I could say, yeah, it was a cute little story about a duck and a mongoose. Who is going to check whether that's true or not? I'm not sure. But you can see in here that the bill specifically talks about, the Attorney General may withhold or redact segregable portions, if it jeopardizes an ongoing federal investigation, but only provided that it is narrowly tailored and temporary, meaning that it's going to have to share all the information at some point. Though, what's their definition of tailored and temporary? But then, the same bill says the Attorney General may withhold or redact segregable portions of records that contain information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or national security. So the Attorney General has the power to redact certain things if, that might fall under jeopardizing information for national security. I'm simply just pointing it out there. If you're like, well, what are you trying to say, Scott? Even though the House and the Senate and the President, to all of their credit, voted to release the Epstein files, which is great. Good. The way that there's language in the bill, I'm worried about excessive redactions and the current ongoing investigation that Trump just opened up, and the legal mechanisms in which the Department of Justice can avoid fulfilling that promise. Because Pam Bondi said that she's going to follow the law. Well, the law that they just passed states that you might be able to avoid releasing certain information. So, while this might look like a victory, it could also just be a little bit of the same kind of status quo. Now, again, I want all the files released. I want all the names released. It doesn't have to just be people of my opposing political party. I don't care. There are Democrats that are involved in these files. Great. Hold them accountable. You're not going to see me cry a river for them. Though, I also just want to point out that because of the way the language in this bill, I'm worried that it's going to lead to excessive redactions and certain information they decide to keep secret because the law permits them to keep it a little bit more secret. we shall see what happens in the coming days. With all that being said, I hope that you all enjoyed the live stream. If you want to go and read the bill, definitely go and check it out. It's HR 4405, House Resolution 4405. And you can see in here under subsection C about permitted withholdings. And we're going to see this in the next couple days. You know, it's going to be really the subject of intense scrutiny. Now, I need to get to work. I appreciate every single one of you. Was Jenny in here today? Because I need to make sure to put Jenny as a moderator. By the way, I did not really even read people's comments because so many people are probably just spamming crap. So don't, yeah. We don't need that kind of crap in here. But Jenny, were you in here today? I appreciate every single one of you. Trump blue Bubba. Oh my God, people screaming gay like it's some sort of insult. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. I'm an IRC mod in Progressive. Please add me as a mod, sir. I have to get to know you first. I'm not just going to trust your word. Yeah, release the files no matter who's incarnated. Amen. Anyway, I need to get to work. I love all of you. Shout out to my amazing moderators. Akicha, Kate, Elisa, Jenny, let's see who else. Cantisa, Joanna Tech, Kate, Cherie, y'all are amazing. So make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Go check out my latest videos. And just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything ever dim your shine. I love all of you so much. Bye!